BBC News with Sue Montgomery. The White House says President Biden's phone conversation with his Chinese counterpart was direct and straightforward. The pair spoke for more than 2 hours. Afterwards, Beijing said Xi Jinping had warned Mr. Biden against playing with fire over Taiwan. A possible visit to the self-governing island by the US House Speaker has been raising tensions. From Washington, Barbara Pletasher.
The Chinese are usually quite strong about any sort of visit by U.S. lawmakers to Taiwan. They do see them as provocations and warn against them. But given that Nancy Pelosi is quite senior, and she's also from the same party as the president, Joe Biden, so all of these things seem to have increased the kinds of reaction and warning from the Chinese. Mr. Biden said last week that the military thought it wasn't a great idea for her to go right now. So he's come that close to basically saying that it probably isn't a good idea from his point of view, although he didn't put those words in his mouth.
An Iranian human rights group says that more than 30 executions have been carried out in the past week, with 3 women executed on Wednesday for killing their husbands, including one who'd been married as a child bride. Our Middle East analyst Sebastian Usher reports.
The Iran human rights group says that Sohaila Abadi was hanged in prison several years after she killed her husband, to whom she'd been married when she was 15 years old. The rights group says the court that sentenced her said the motive for the murder 10 years after their marriage was a family dispute. Rights groups say that Iran is the biggest executioner of women in the world, most of whom have been found guilty of killing their husbands. Activists say there are reports of domestic violence in many of the cases, but these are not necessarily taken into account in court. In a report released this week, Amnesty International said that Iran is currently carrying out executions at a horrifying pace.
Venezuela and Colombia have announced they'll re-establish full diplomatic relations when Colombia's left-wing president-elect, Gustavo Petro, is inaugurated next month. Caracas Foreign Minister Álvaro Leiva made the announcement during a meeting with his soon-to-be Colombian counterpart in the border town of San Cristobal. Will Grant reports.
Gustavo Petro's election win in Colombia was always likely to signal a return to warmer ties with Venezuela. However, that has happened so quickly after his victory at the polls shows that the leftist president-elect in Colombia represents a far more palatable neighbour for the socialist government in Caracas. The two nations will appoint ambassadors to each other's capitals and re-establish full diplomatic ties after a total breakdown in relations. Ties worsened 3 years ago after Colombia recognised the then head of the National Assembly, Juan Guaidó, as president, prompting outrage from the administration of President Nicolás Maduro.
BBC News. Argentina has replaced its economy minister for the second time in less than a month, amid rising inflation and concerns over low levels of international reserves. The new minister, Sergio Massa, who leads the lower house of Congress, will head a newly created super economy ministry, incorporating the current departments of agriculture, fisheries and productive development. The governor of the American state of Kentucky says flash floods caused by torrential rains have killed 8 people. Andy Beshear described the floods, which have hit areas in the Appalachian Mountains, as historic and ongoing, and said he feared further deaths as several people were missing. The two politicians vying to become the next British Prime Minister have for the first time fielded questions from members of their Conservative Party, who go on to choose the winner. It's the first of 12 hustings before September, when either Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss will be declared as the next leader. Here's Damien Grammaticus.
Rishi Sunak said the number one challenge facing the country was inflation, and he would get it back under control. One audience member accused him of stabbing Boris Johnson in the back. Mr Sunak insisted he resigned because of differences over economic policy. Liz Truss said the government should not have closed schools during the pandemic, claiming the move caused a great deal of damage. Asked why she had been rude about her school, Ms Truss claimed she was not claiming it was a sink school, but teaching there was patchy. And she said she would direct schools to keep single-sex spaces, including toilets, so girls could have the privacy they needed.
The Prince of Wales, representing the Queen, has officially opened the Commonwealth Games in the British city of Birmingham. 5,000 athletes from 72 countries and territories will take part in nearly 300 events. Prince Charles said Birmingham represented the diversity and unity of the Commonwealth. BBC News.